Hey there, OU football fans. Parker Thune alongside Jesse Critton, and this is Quick Slants. We bring you one of these every single week following Brent Venables' weekly press conference, which takes place Tuesday mornings. And you knew, Jesse, that in the aftermath of the beatdown Oklahoma experienced at the hands of Texas last Saturday, there were going to be some borderline contentious questions asked in today's press conference, some very tough questions, one way or the other. And there were such questions asked of Brent Venables. He fielded them all with grace, I would say. It took them all in stride. There was never a hint of combativeness or anything, very matter of fact responses, but a couple of them were very, very interesting. The first, and we'll let y'all take a listen to it. Brent Venables did not rule out the possibility that Oklahoma could use two quarterbacks in the same game at some point.
Well, I'm certainly not immune to anything, and I know Steve Spurrier did it, for his whole career. But that being said, it'd be great if you had one that you could, get behind and do the things that are necessary in order to win. And would certainly not put it out of the realm of possibility, in the future.
Okay, Jesse, I'll give the floor to you first before I air my thoughts on the matter. What do you think of that? Just conceptually, is it something that in the year of our Lord 2024 you can do as a football program, especially as a program embroiled in so much recent turmoil as Oklahoma has been?
I'll be honest, I was pretty stunned at his answer, and not that he said anything offensive. It was a good question, but to me, I was not only stunned at how open-minded he seemed to be about the idea, but it also, to me, Parker, seemed like it's something that has been considered. It's been something that's been discussed, possibly. And to me, Parker, it kind of fell in the theme of kind of the overall press conference was for me, this was the most Brent Venables has ever talked about the offense. He spent basically his entire 9-minute opening statement devoted specifically to the offense and how bad it was on Saturday. To me, the main takeaway was that it's clear there's a lot of options on the table. And when it comes to this two quarterback question, Parker, combine that with everything he said about that he and Jackson had discussed the possibility of redshirting him this season. I mean, I think one of the quotes in there, one of the things he said was that they have told him that if he gets back in the game, it's going to be from a perspective of trying to win the game, implying obviously that they wouldn't put him out there for mop up duty. So
Yeah.
to me, Parker, I think, and I'm curious your perspective, but to me, I took all of that as kind of a sign that the offense has been so bad and that Saturday was so bad that they can't really afford to have any options off the table. They can't afford to just say no. And I can tell you right now, Brent Venables' preference is not to have a two quarterback system. It's not his preference to have a starter who has the possibility of getting yanked, just like they did with Jackson against Tennessee. I promise you that is not his preference. But to me, no, he didn't act like the sky was falling, but his answer to that question and a couple others made it seem pretty dang clear to me, Parker, that nothing's off the table. That's how bad things are.
Yeah, well, and nothing can be off the table at this point with how rough things have been and certainly were on Saturday, which was the low point. I mean, you have to hope that that's rock bottom because if it gets any lower than that, man, that's going to be ugly. But to me, and obviously Venables said, look, obviously you'd like to be able to just roll with one quarterback in an ideal world. But Jesse, if that ever becomes a conversation, I'm not convinced it ever comes into play because if such a conversation has ensued between Venables and Arnold about the possibility of Arnold redshirting, that tells you what we all kind of suspect, which is that Arnold envisions himself playing elsewhere in 2025, and there's no real reason to expend another year of eligibility for 5 appearances, just like he did a season ago. But if at any point a two quarterback system is on the table in any capacity, I hate that. I don't think you can do it because my standpoint always has been since the Houston game has never changed. I'll continue to preach this. when you made the change from Jackson Arnold to Michael Hawkins, in effect, you committed to Michael Hawkins for the remainder of the 2024 season, come hell or high water, obviously barring injury. There's absolutely no good, short term or long term, that could come of inserting a guy like Casey Thompson. And if you were to go back to Jackson Arnold, okay, best case scenario, what does that buy you? Uh, an additional win, maybe two. And what does that mean in the grand scheme when you know full well that at season's end, Arnold in all likelihood is not coming back anyway? So at this point, as I see it, you got to let the freshman take his lumps, and it might not be pretty at times. It wasn't the prettiest of performances from Hawkins this past Saturday, but there have been exciting flashes. There have been encouraging flashes. And ultimately, quarterback is not the preeminent issue for Oklahoma offensively. So at this point, this season is what it is. It's obviously not what you've hoped or expected that it would be. But at this point, you are playing a long term game and you have eyes toward 2025, even if nobody, and I don't think anybody on that staff or in that building would admit it, but you have to kind of have 2025 in mind and in view when you're making decisions about your football team and specifically about your quarterbacks going forward. Uh, I think the best course of action is just to ride it out with Hawkins and understand that he's going to make some freshman mistakes. There will be some things he won't see. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be flawless. But at the end of the day, he will be better off for it come week 1 in 2025, having had the experience of earning 8 starts as a true freshman in 24.
No, and I completely agree with you. And I'll quickly add two things. One, I didn't take any of that as to suggest that it's likely that a two quarterback system is
Yeah.
coming. I didn't take it that way. And I completely agree with you. I think not only when they made the switch from Arnold to Hawkins, it was kind of implicit that you're riding with Hawkins the rest of the way, because ultimately what they're not going to do is they've already obviously risked their future with Jackson. The one thing you can't do is risk the future with both Jackson and Michael Hawkins. They're not
Bingo.
going to do anything to make to risk both those futures. So that's I wanted to also say that. I don't think it's coming. I think I took it more as it's so bad you can't put anything off the table.
Well, and you also don't want to lose the fan base too, because if you lose the fan base, you're cooked at that point. I don't think that's on the precipice of happening, but playing musical chairs with quarterbacks is one way to get there and get there on a much more expedited timeline. The other interesting thing today, the other interesting response that we got out of Brent Venables, and it was a very direct question by one of the most direct reporters in the business, and Barry Trammell. He asked Brent Venables, and we all kind of understood what the insinuation there was. Hey, what do you think of midseason staff changes? What's your general philosophy on that? And here was Brent Venables' answer.
You go back and look at where I've been. I've not been a part of any staff changes in the middle of the season with Bill Schneider, Bob Stoops, or at Clemson with Dabo. And, there's always problems. Sometimes people know about them, sometimes they don't. There's always some level of struggle, and you got to work through your problems, find the best possible solutions. And if you have success, it's everybody. And sometimes when you don't have success, people want to point to one guy. And sometimes it's probably appropriate to blame one person, but most of the time it's not. It's a combination of a lot of things while you're struggling. And so again, you try to put it all together and have a perspective. Not make any, rash decisions based on the information that you have. And at the end of the day, there's nothing easy about any of it. And but I've been a part of those staffs too, where maybe at the end of the year decisions were made, at the end of the year, but nothing midseason.
So there you go, Jesse. A rational, thought out answer from Brent Venables, one that I think you kind of expected, and certainly one that is commensurate with the perspectives, whether stated or implicit, of his influences over the years. What did you think of that response from Brent Venables?
Yeah, I think ultimately, I mean, obviously, he didn't say that it's not something he would ever consider, and he didn't say he was vehemently against it. But I think what was implicit in his answer is two things. One, I thought it was notable that he pointed out all of his previous stops, all of his previous experience, that that's never happened, and so that's obviously influenced him. And two, Parker, to me, it's kind of the same general thoughts that we've talked about. We talked about it on the radio on Monday. This can't be a situation where you make a change just to make a change. And I think part of what Brent's answer, not only to this question, but a couple times he brought up, is you have to look at the entire picture. And when it comes to the potential of a midseason change, and obviously Seth Luttrell is the main person in question here, I think you have to make that with I think you have to have something tangible to point to say, hey, if we make this move, there is real reason to be confident that X will get better, or Y will get better, or Z will get better. And you can't, and you also have to take into account what are the negatives that come if you make this change. So to me, my takeaway from what he said was basically to suggest that you can't get so caught up in the moment to make a move like this. And to me, he's taking all of this discussion or all of the big picture ideas, and to me, while he didn't say it's off the table, to me what's clear to me is that it's saying you don't gain enough to make this change right now. It makes more sense to evaluate things after the season, which is also what he said. He's obviously been on staffs where things have happened after the season, just not in the middle. And to me, it's just clear that there's not enough of a positive, or there's not enough benefits to trying to make real big changes to the staff now, as opposed to after the season, which what we can infer, Parker, if the offense doesn't get better, there are going to be changes that happen after the season. And it probably makes more sense to do those after the season as opposed to doing it right now.
Yes, indeed. And I thought it was a perfect answer from Venables. Absolutely perfect answer because of what you just referenced right there. Venables he didn't explicitly say the words, we're going to evaluate things after the season, but anybody who listened to those comments understood that that's what he was getting at, was that once the season gets over, yeah, there may very well be changes on the horizon. But for the time being, I concur with Venables, and we talked about this in the post-game podcast immediately following the Red River rivalry, the 34-3 beatdown. There just is not enough to gain from making a change mid-season, because then you're essentially throwing your offense into organized chaos for the remainder of the season, because you're eliminating your offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and whoever you appoint as play caller, Jesse, is still going to be running Seth Luttrell's offense. It's just a case of somebody picking from the same playbook as opposed to somebody bringing a new scheme to the table. So there's not enough change that can occur. And frankly, there's a lot more that could come to the offense's detriment, especially with an inexperienced quarterback, than could improve the bottom line for this Oklahoma offense. And so I think everybody understands that if things don't get better, changes will have to be made in the offseason, if for no other reason than to appease a fan base that is already verging on rabid. But for the time being, mid-season, with where Oklahoma's at right now, you just have to ride it out. You have to hope and expect that things get better. And if they don't, then it's altogether clear at season's end what needs to happen. But for where we are right now, for where Oklahoma is right now, there is not really, I'm not going to say there is no good that can come from making a change, but there is not enough good, as you said, to justify that change as of right now. The Sooners will have an opportunity to get back on track this weekend against South Carolina. We will have much more coverage coming your way. Jesse and Brian are going to have the Oklahoma Drill podcast dropping later this week, taking a look at the things that Oklahoma needs to improve on conceptually and schematically in order to play better offensive football. We're going to have the Under the Visor pregame podcast. We'll have the post-practice splits. We'll have a variety of content for you here on the YouTube channel, which is why I would recommend you click subscribe. You won't start getting emails. It won't cost you anything. It just helps us out. Helps us with the amount of content and the breadth of content that we can bring you. And certainly go subscribe over at ouinsider.com if you haven't already. I took a very in-depth, sourced, big picture look at some of the problems facing this program yesterday in a Monday article. There's a whole lot of exclusive information over there on the site that you can't get here or anywhere else. So for just a few bucks a month, OUinsider.com is certainly the place to be as a premium member. So we hope to see you over there, excuse me. We'll certainly see you again on this YouTube channel in the not too distant future. For Jesse Crittenden, I am Parker Thune. This has been Quick Slants. Take it easy, everybody. Sweet.